Before I get started with the story, let me give a shout out to Kwaku Doncor on Instagram for sending me this story. And this is a story that I briefly heard about on certain pages on social media, mainly from people who are in the trucking industry, involving this guy whose name is Rogel Aguilera-Mederos, who just got hit with a 110-year sentence over this major collision that he was involved with involving his truck, and how there was a lot of truckers who made a petition. I think they said they got over 3 million signatures for, they felt the sentencing that he got was intensely harsh. They said justice for Rogel and everything like that. But based on some of the details that Kwanku has sent me, it's kind of odd that people are really going to bat for this guy, considering on some additional details that have been sent to me from Kwanku. Now, I'm going to read to you what Kwanku sent me, and then I'm going to read the article that he sent to me as well. Just, in case there isn't, something mentioned there that he mentioned, but maybe it's something he found in an article that he sent me in, which is why he pointed these major things out. And let me just tell you, the pictures that I'm seeing of this destruction is crazy. I'm looking at the pictures and I can't believe what I'm looking at, but I'll incorporate that into the thumbnail. That way you can see it for yourself. The first thing that Kwanku sent me, he said he lied about his experience to get the job. He said when his brakes started smoking, he ignored it and kept driving. He failed to use the truck off ramp, which resulted in a 20-plus collision, including multiple fatalities. The 110-year sentence is out of the judge's control due to mandatory minimums, yet they say he was discriminated against because he's Latino, and mainstream media is all for it. Now, that's what Kwanku sent to me. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read this article that he sent to me as well. That's coming from newsbeezer.com, that was posted on December 17th, 2021. And I'm recording this video on December 24th, 2021. It says, what I'm saying is that if I had discretion, this would not be my sentence, said a Colorado State District judge when he sentenced a young Cuban to 110 years in prison. In 2019, 4 people were killed and several were injured when the then 23-year-old Rogel Aguilera on Interstate 70 west of Denver collided with the wooden truck he was driving into several stopped cars. According to investigators from the Lakewood Police Department, Aguilera-Mederos was not under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time of the accident. He also had no criminal record. The defense alleged that the brakes on the truck of the young man who was not using the emergency ramp that could have prevented the tragedy had failed. As Judge Bruce Jones stated at the time of the conviction, the young trucker made terrible and reckless decisions despite having no intention of causing harm. However, since state law requires that the term of the imprisonment for some of the charges Aguilera-Mederos has faced, including assault and attempted assault, be at least 10 years, as well as serving sentences sequentially rather than concurrently, the young Cuban will have to spend the rest of his life in prison if the sentence is upheld. The case has sparked heated debate in the U.S. with an online motion signed by more than 1.6 million people asking Colorado Governor Jared Polis to commute or even postpone the young Cuban to grant. Several artists such as the Colombian J Balvin and other personalities such as the Cuban boxer Yordenis Ugas has expressed their rejection of the judgment. On April 25, 2019, Rogel Aguilera-Mederos lost control of the truck driving Interstate 70 near a mall west of Denver. Investigators in the case confirmed that the truck's brakes began to overheat on a steep descent, and Aguilera-Mederos continued on despite seeing smoke rising from them. So that was one of the points that Kwanku sent me. That part about him being neglectful of his brake smoking and giving out, and he just kept moving. He kept going. When the truck's brake completely failed, Aguilera-Mederos did not use the emergency ramp that could have stopped the vehicle and incidentally escaped the tragedy. Instead, the truck hit several vehicles that were stopped due to an accident on the motorway in the area. The impact was so severe that Miguel Angel Lamas Arellano was killed, William Bailey, Doyle Harrison, and Stanley Napolitano were also killed. There was also a fire so large that local media reported that the asphalt of the freeway had melted at the point. According to the affidavit of Aguilera-Mederos, the young man thought he was going to die, so he closed his eyes before colliding with the parked traffic. Prosecutors argued that Aguilera-Mederos had several options to avoid the tragedy and that his poor choices caused the accident. For this reason, the jury found the young man guilty of extreme indifference in 6 cases of first-degree assault, 10 cases of first-degree attempted assault with extreme indifference, 2 cases of vehicle assault, a reckless driving charge, and 4 incidents of reckless driving resulting in death. Speaking to local newspaper, the Denver Post, Dwayne Bailey, one of the victim's brothers, said he made a conscious and deliberate choice that his life was more important than anyone else on the street that day. Gage Evans, the widow of another victim, told a local TV station that Aguilera-Mederos deserved a prison sentence and was relieved by the jury's verdict. During the trial, the young truck driver cried and apologized to the victims' families. "I'm not a criminal," he said. "I'm not a murderer. When I see the charges against me, we're talking about a murderer, and that's not me. I've never thought of hurting anyone in my life." He added that his life was difficult after the incident and he kept thinking about the people who have died. "I've lost my brakes. The truckers know this is a difficult time. There is nothing you can do. There is nothing you can do," said Aguilera-Mederos during the conviction. The Denver Post newspaper devoted its December 15th editorial to the young Cuban's case, calling on Colorado Governor Jared Polis to investigate the possibility of a pardon and thus a reduction in his sentence. A tool that Aguilera-Mederos used for its work has failed. The U.S. judicial system has always had difficulty dealing with unlawful deaths when it comes to deterring others and promoting rehabilitation. How many years in prison is enough?" asked the newspaper editors. They also added that the governor and the audit committee should review the case to avoid unfair judgments like Aguilera-Mederos in the future. The newspaper also noted in an article on Thursday that the 110-year prison sentence shows that Colorado's mandatory minimum sentence laws and the ability of the district attorneys to use such laws to guarantee convictions need to be reviewed. According to the Denver Post, Aguilera-Mederos was sentenced to double imprisonment like some Colorado killers after his conviction sparked state law provisions that forced the judge to serve a minimum sentence of 110 years. Some believe the blame should lie with the company that owns the truck. In a petition signed by more than 1.6 million people online through change.org, Colorado resident Heather Gilby said the company had failed several safety inspections since 2017. "Nobody but the employer should be responsible for this incident," said Gilby. The case also has a major impact on the Cuban community in the United States, with many voices calling for a pardon for the young truck driver. So that is everything that the article has read, and I can see where Kwaku got his points from, because everything that he mentioned in the beginning of this, which is why I read his points first to see everything lined up, pretty much lined up again with this article. So this happened back in April of 2019. I'm thinking that this just recently happened, but when they were talking about sentencing, I had to say to myself, this is definitely something that happened a while back for them to be in the sentencing phase. What I will say is this: yes, he definitely has a lot of blame in this, considering he is supposedly, an experienced truck driver, and he made a very reckless decision not to take that off ramp, that emergency ramp, to avoid causing this collision. Like I said, we all will see the pictures in the thumbnail, and it's that bad. Like it's so bad you can't believe that a truck actually did this. It's hard to believe that a truck did this, but a truck actually caused this major incident to happen that unfortunately claimed the lives of 4 people, and could have claimed a 5th one, because he's extremely lucky that he didn't die, because his truck got messed up too. His truck is like done. So that was very reckless on his part as someone who's supposed to know what he's supposed to be doing. I didn't see the part where he said he lied about his experience to get the job. That's one part when I was reading. I didn't see that part. So that one's kind of up in the air for me. But everything else about the brake starting to smoking, him ignoring it, him not using the off truck ramp and everything like that, that pretty much all checks out right there. That yes, this guy was just being completely reckless. And what got me was the part when he said he put his hands over his eyes because he got scared or something like that. Like, huh? That's crazy. But the thing of the matter is if he knew his brake started to go out and he saw an opportunity to take that off ramp while his brakes were still in some kind of working order, he should have taken that. The fact that he kept going and then the brakes ended up going out and he couldn't stop himself at all because the brakes were completely dead, thus causing the collision. That's the part that really messes his whole case up. Because that's what they leaned heavy on for the sentencing, was that part right there. If nothing else, that is what got him, was the pure recklessness of his actions, or the lack of actions that he could have taken. And as an experienced truck driver, he should have known what to do, because I'm sure they tell them that. Now, at the end, they said that the employer should be at fault because they said that they've had problems in the past and everything like that with the trucks. Granted, that person does have a point. If they do have some things dealing, with the trucks and the brakes and everything like that, that's why I need people who work in trucking. Y'all can definitely contribute to this conversation more than I could. I'm just going based off of what I'm reading. And common sense at that. So if the trucking company definitely has some issues with their brakes and everything like that, they definitely should be inspecting these trucks over and over again. However, they don't have any record of something like this happening. Now, if something like this happened in the past and then it happened again, then you can say, okay, now we have a repeat occurrence with these trucks and their brakes. But the fact this only happened one time and all these details come out surrounding him, then it makes him look like the sole person responsible for what happened. He doesn't have anything to fall back on as a cushion to say that these trucks are bad. You only have, the truck wasn't going good here and it wasn't going good here. But were the persons driving the truck, did they do what he did? If not, then the ball bounces back into his court. So like I said, it really goes back to him not being responsible and him being reckless. Because one would think that he probably could have been under the influence and everything like that, but they drug tested him and everything, and they said there's no drugs and no alcohol in his system. It's just he just made clearly some very bad decisions, unfortunately, that caused and claimed the lives of 4 people. And that's not a good look either, because people died from this. It's not like there were no casualties from this. 4 people lost their lives from this. And then the fact that he walked away unscathed, and as far as like okay and still breathing, that probably really put the families of those victims on edge. Because it's like, our loved ones are gone, yet we're sitting in this courtroom trying to decide the fate of the person who's responsible. That's always going to stick inside of the minds of the victim's family. This guy's alive for what he did, but our loved ones are not. So all we're going to settle for is this 110-year sentence. And then they said that this is state mandatory minimums for what he did, which means he had a lot of charges that he got hit with for them to come out with a 110-year minimum sentencing. Now, some are going to claim that this is an extremely harsh sentencing. I always say when people get years like that, I said they must have done something horrifically wrong. And they said this thing was so bad that the asphalt started to melt, which means it could have easily been a collapse that could have happened behind this if the firefighters and the crews didn't get out there to put these fires out. And it could have been even more damage. So it's like, you got to really think about all the stuff surrounding everything involving this, on top of he made a reckless decision to not take that off ramp. He closed his eyes out of fear. He drove his truck into this traffic. There was already an accident, which is why there was so much traffic. Now you have this coming behind you. 4 people died, and that asphalt started to melt. That's a lot of taxpayers' money that's literally gone down the drain all in one day because of what he did. And I'm certain that the trucking company that he worked for, had to pay some money as well that they didn't want to pay. I'm talking about there was probably a lot of wrongful death suits, like literally being handed out to all parties involved from the victims' families. And why not? Because if that was my loved one, I would be one of the ones handing out a wrongful death suit as well. So I can't really feel too bad for this guy at the end of the day. And the way that they were framing it, they made it seem like he's the complete and utter victim. That's why I didn't jump onto this. And I'm so glad that Kwaku sent me this article and sent me these details. Honestly, it wasn't a story on my radar. So now that I know about it and now that I'm aware about it, I have like, a good scope of it, I can't really jump behind this guy and say, oh, I'll sign this petition and, to commute the sentencing or postpone it or see if they can lower it or whatever the case may be. And don't try to use, oh, he's Latino or Cuban for why they did this. Because if this was a black person, they would have probably gotten the same sentencing or maybe even possibly worse. But see, I know what they're trying to do on that aspect of it, but it's just not going to work. Like I said, it didn't even have to be a person who's Cuban that did this. It could have been probably anybody. Now, of course, if they're PC, that's up in the air. But hey, this is the consequence right here. It sounded like to me like he panicked, and in that moment he didn't know what to do. But if you're an experienced truck driver, they teach you that, and you decided to go against it, even though you knew there was an issue, but you kept going because you thought that you was going to make it to the other side. And see, he probably thought he could get through that traffic. Too late. But that's my stance on it. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Okay, so I had to come back on here and insert this update, as many of you already know. But of course, when I did the first part of the video, that was when this guy only had the 110-year sentence. And I was talking about they were fighting to get that reduced. Well, now I'm coming on here to confirm with this update that this guy, Rogel Aguilera-Mederos, sentence has been reduced 100 years from 110 to 10 years. Basically saying that while he is not blameless for what he did because it still was reckless, they believe that the sentencing of 110 years was inappropriate for what did happen. But he's still going to be serving time for the crime in which he committed. And I think they were also scared of that petition that those truckers put out there and how widespread it got and how it got a lot of signatures. I think they said that thing got millions of signatures from this event. And since we know how important the trucking industry is, especially when it comes to delivering things, whether it's personal or business related, they knew that if this went through, that they would have did a nationwide strike, and that would have been an even bigger disaster. So I think they also took that into consideration as well. I even said in my video, not in my video, in the first part of this video, that I thought 110 years was a lot, considering what he did. But a crime is a crime at the end of the day, or what, a criminal act is a criminal act, and that was what he did, was indeed reckless. So he should consider himself extremely lucky that he's not going to spend the rest of his life behind bars. But I hope that there's a lesson that he learns from this. I'm almost certain that when he gets out of jail, that there will not be another trucking job available to him, mainly because he's too much of a liability. He brought a lot of danger to not only himself, but to others as well. Because I still stand on the fact that he was being enacted very reckless, and as a truck driver, he should have known and used better judgment. But that's pretty much the update right there. He's not going to do the 110 years. He's only going to do 10. So I believe, I don't know how old he is, but he'll be out. And I don't know when he starts jail. I think he's been locked up since 2019. So if they do time served, then that means he really only has about 8 years left. So he'll be out most likely in 2029 or somewhere around that area.